Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's rare that the Sport and Rec spokespeople of parties get to speak on a bill. We're usually congratulating some sports team or other for fantastic efforts overseas, so I'm very pleased to take a call on this bill. I personally am an obsessive follower of particularly cricket, cycling and rugby, and some say that we are, in fact, a sports-obsessed nation, and I guess there's some evidence for that. So, if I think back to 1981, there were plenty of people who were saying that, in fact, sport, the opportunity for the rugby tour from the Springboks, should take precedence over fundamental human rights breaches. Now, that sense of priorities evident in that line of thinking suggests that there's something deeply askew in the minds of many. Now, we still see, though, that kind of thinking today. My personal favourite example of that askew thinking came in the 1980s when a magistrate was found dead in the Hooker Falls after being murdered when a bondage session went wrong, and the comment from Auckland Cricket, because this magistrate was also an umpire in Auckland Cricket, was we can't afford to keep losing umpires like this. So, I mean, my question is, so while, Mr. Speaker, I am a cricket tragic, not to that extent. Why is sport so important to us? And partly it's that as human beings, there is something great about seeing human beings test the limits of what is possible in terms of their ability and skill. And so seeing any great sports person performing is fantastic. There's also something inspiring about the effort. So one of my earliest memories of sport actually was from the 1968 Olympics. And that was right at the very end of the marathon when a guy called John Akwari, representing Tanzania, limped into the Olympic Stadium. The people had gone home. The lights were off, and the TV cameras followed him through the streets of Mexico City when all of the other competitors had gone. And his spirit, his endurance, his commitment to finishing was deeply inspiring. Perhaps even more important, Mr. Speaker, is the sense of representation. At the weekend, I had very considerable interest in the Crusaders game. I was interested in the rugby, regardless of whether it was a good game or not between the Waratahs and the Brumbies. As it turned out, it was a pretty rubbish game. But actually my sense of stake in the game, my sense of stake in the outcome was not nearly as great as for the Crusaders games. Well, why is that? Why is that important? It's because of that sense of representation that we have when we feel a sense of connection to the person or to the team that is competing. And that representation, that sense of representation is important because we feel a sense of ownership of the success or otherwise of that person or team. When they succeed, it feels like we ourselves have succeeded a bit. Mr. Speaker, I join with others in congratulating the success of our Commonwealth Games team. I'm very pleased that Mark Mitchell mentioned the achievements of Anton Cooper and Sam Gaze. Anton Cooper's a great young guy I met through the tour of New Zealand a few years ago, and I know that right now kids are competing against each other on their way to school on their bikes. Who's going to be Anton, who's going to be Sam? That's fantastic, Mr. Speaker, because that inspiration that they are providing is going to lead to that next level, not only of competition at elite level, but also into increased physical activity, which goodness only knows, Mr. Speaker, this nation certainly needs. But what about the other side? At one point in my life, I worked in the evenings for a cleaning company. And the cleaning company was owned by a guy who trained racehorses in the Waikato. And the other cleaners were jockeys and people who worked in the stables, people who worked in the industry. And after listening to their conversation during our breaks about what was coming up in the weekend's races, there's no way in the world that I would ever be betting on horse races unless I had inside information about who was trying to win a race and who was deliberately just stacking the odds for their next race. The industry is rigged, sir. As people know, I'm a cycling obsessive as well, and I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people who believed against all the evidence in Lance Armstrong. No, I followed his career. I wanted to believe that he had transcended that terrible illness that he had, and had through his own efforts achieved that amazing success. And it came as a body blow to me, sir, and I know to others who perhaps had suspended our disbelief when the evidence finally became irrefutable. Cheating in sport is like a cancer to sport and to those benefits that we get from it. Chris Cairns, I well remember a fantastic whirlwood century that he scored in a one-day international against England. Stayed in my memory for a long time. What should I make of that now? I'm not sure. I'm a person who loathes sports betting. I wish it had never been introduced and wish that it was not a part of the sporting scene now. And for me, sir, the match fixing is another form of cheating. And cheating undermines all of that nobleness of spirit that we encounter in sport, that we derive from sport, that we celebrate in sport. Match fixing has absolutely no place in sport, and the Green Party fully supports this bill, sir.
Call the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
As everybody knows, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand First